All right, good evening, everybody. This is the Community Consolidated School District 46 Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, December 8th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. We are here at the Grays Lake Middle School this time due to a water main or water sprinkler break at Frederick School. So I need a call to order and a roll call, please.
Weedman,
Here.
Braden,
Here.
Albert,
Here.
LaCroix,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
and Nash.
Here.
Okay, so that gives us a quorum. If we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Okay, thank you. Next, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Miller,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye?
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
and Nash.
Aye.
Okay. Brings us up to public comments. Has anybody signed up there, Jessica? No? Okay, were they going to speak or they got something else? Okay. All right, next are board reports. I guess I would like to start that one off. I have two things. First, if the board members could be ready for the meeting in January to report out on our III conference classes that we went to during your board reports. If we can do that at the next meeting, that would be great. And then, so the other one is an apology to the board members. I know you understand why I left the training the other night for the interest-based bargaining. It was kind of an unexpected event. But on top of that, I did reach out to Rosa to see about making up the training individually. She sent me back an email, stated that she sent me the information, and if I have any questions about it, I can call her and follow up with her that way. So I did reach out, just so everybody knows that I didn't just blow it off, so lack of a better term. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Jim, do you want me to hold off on the delegates session till January as well?
Sure.
Okay, that's fine. I can do that.
Thank you for your service, Jim.
See?
Did you? I don't know if you heard me.
I heard
Thank you. And then, just so everyone knows, the CEC is doing Dare to Lead again this year, and we've got three or four open spots. So if anyone's interested, it's a time commitment. It's 8 sessions, and they're 3 hours each in January. But it's in the evening from 5:30 to 8:30. So if that's something you're interested in doing, you are more than welcome to join us.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Mrs. Braden for serving in my place at III as a delegate for our distinguished board due to my unexpected health emergency. So thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. I hope I represented you well.
Anybody else have anything? No? Okay. And we're up to the superintendent's report.
Well, we have a longer than usual superintendent's report because we had an emergency yesterday. So and then we have a lot of other things that I wanted to share with you. So I will start with this emergency, talking about what happened yesterday at Frederick School and where we are now. So at 4:25 approximately yesterday, an alarm went at Frederick. Approximately 60 students were still there for clubs. And staff brought them outside, and the students were picked up by parents as it was just right at the end of clubs anyway, so that timing was pretty helpful. Meanwhile, fire department with quite a few emergency vehicles showed up. It was discovered fairly quickly that the cause of the alarm was a frozen sprinkler pipe that had blown 2 sprinkler heads in the attic on the west side of the building. above room 301. Most damage occurred in room 301, where all ceiling tiles were dropped, and the room was completely flooded, along with room 302, which was flooded with water that came underneath the divider from 301, along with room 101, which was flooded with water coming from room above 301. More damage that we'll talk about in a little bit. But within an hour and a half, the following occurred. First of all, a decision was pretty quickly made that students could not be in school the next day. And we wanted to get that information to staff right away so that they could begin planning, and parents right away, many of whom would have work responsibilities significantly disrupted because they need to have their children at home. So we needed to get that information out right away. We also sent it out to the Board of Education and all administrators. The restoration company, JC Restoration was called, and members of the custodial and maintenance team came to Frederick to begin the cleanup process, and they were soon joined by JC Restoration. Throughout the evening, late afternoon and evening, Eric Detweiler, James Goshi, the two administrators in the school, Adam Halperin, Chris Vipont, and I were all in the building. And Chris Wildman contacted our insurance company as well as Durham and Arbor to let them know that they wouldn't be serving students from Frederick today. Adam and the restoration company left Frederick sometime after midnight. Is that right, Miss? Where is he? Is that right? About a little after midnight, yeah? Okay. And at that point, 90% of the water had been cleaned up, and there were blowers and dehumidifiers in action. So that was yesterday. Today, this morning, administration met with Frederick staff to discuss the situation and plan for remote learning for the day. Some teachers then taught from home, some stayed in school. We had to actually send some teachers out of their classrooms because their classrooms weren't able to be used at all. JC Restoration continued to clean up and assess the damage, and the cleanup on the first floor right now is complete, which is wonderful, and they're hoping to complete the second floor tonight. Adam began the process of scheduling an air quality assessment, and it was determined today that students need to continue learning remotely for at least 2 more days while carpets continue to dry. So that ongoing remote learning was communicated to families and staff this afternoon so that people can prepare. I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Halperin to talk about the current damage assessment.
Dr. Glickman, thank you very much. Members of the board, yes, last night was a fun night. As Dr. Glickman stated, we did have 2 sprinkler heads that froze and broke. We did manage to get to it rather quickly in a 20-minute period of time. Unfortunately, in 20 minutes, 60 to 80 pounds of water goes through a 1-inch pipe very fast. Up on the second floor, we had approximately 3 inches of water that extended out through 10 classrooms between the first and second floor, multiple hallways. The first floor ceiling tiles, unfortunately, in a lot of places in the hallways did not make it. Approximately between 50 to 60 ceiling tiles on a minimum are going to need to be replaced. Up on the second floor, rooms 301, 302 were some of the worst hit rooms that we had. 301 is almost a complete loss, as that is where the actual heads blew on it. Unfortunately, we were not able to save very much at this point. Tomorrow, we are meeting with with Gallagher Bassett, our insurance company, our adjusters, and they get to see all the wonderful pictures that we have taken and see the damage that has occurred. At this point, we do have the carpet in 10 of the rooms pulled up that will need to be replaced because inside of the sprinkler pipes, there is oil in the water due to the oil that's inside the pipes. We would not have been able to get that out of the carpet. So unfortunately, that carpet will have to be replaced. Approximately, 15 Chromebooks, it's an approximate, Tomorrow, Mr. Vipond and his team will be going through and looking over other technology devices that are there and seeing what else might have been lost on his end. There's a bunch of other instructional material for that's teachers, there's kids stuff that will have to be gone through. Today was the initial, let's get in, get the cleaning taken care of the process. Also make sure that everything is safe and taken care of so teachers can get in without an issue. As Dr. Glickman stated, over this weekend, I am going to be meeting with air quality people that will come in. They will assess the building. Once the mitigation is done and dried, we will go ahead and do an air quality sample throughout the building just to ensure that there's no other hidden damages throughout, and that it will be safe for everybody to return. Luckily, we were able to soak up that water very fast. So it didn't sit where it can go through. JCR has also gone ahead and they have done moisture tests throughout the walls, so they know where that stands. Eventually, I will have all of those assessments as they come through. On a daily basis, they are giving me updates. I know it's only been one day, but they sent me an update a little while ago that I have briefed through. I haven't gone completely through it, but I will tell you in one day it was 43 pages. So that is where we stand on it right at this moment. More to come.
Thank you, Adam. I'm sure the board will have questions for you in a little bit. I want to personally thank you. Your action was so quick, and you were able to pull a team together so quickly. Thank you so much. It could have been so much worse. And when we're done with this report, I know it's still the beginning of the meeting, but you were here till after midnight last night. I would like to invite you to go home and be with your family and get some rest when we're done with, and when the board is finished asking you questions in a moment, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, so moving forward, the returning students to school date will be determined as soon as possible. We certainly want to let students and staff know that. It's dependent on the carpet drying. It's dependent on when the air quality can be assessed and, of course, the results of that assessment. So we hope to be able to let people know information soon. Paul Lewis has spoken with the ROE and learned that we'll be able to update our calendar showing that students attended remotely on certain days, so it doesn't push back, you know, these aren't considered emergency days. It doesn't push back our last day of school. Carpet replacement is needed, as Adam talked about, but we can have students in classrooms on the cement. It won't be as cozy, but we can do it, and certainly they're 5th and 6th graders, not kindergartners who are sitting on the floor. 5th and 6th graders do sometimes sit on the floor, but they won't on the cement. And we know that some classrooms will probably not be usable until at least after winter break. And so the administrators at the school have been making plans to use other classroom spaces for the short term. I mean, and I have to share with you, well, you know, both Eric and James, I said to them, you know, I'd love to have you come to the board meeting so I could personally thank you, but also, like with Adam, I'd love for you to go home and get some rest, and they took me up on that. But they have worked so hard to keep their staff feeling positive and kind of set the reasonable expectations about what learning would look like today, because of course nobody was planning on remote learning today, so it couldn't look like what it looked like, you know, all last spring, certainly, or last year. And just trying to get things organized. They've been doing an amazing job. Adam is meeting with the insurance adjuster tomorrow, right, as well as carpet contractors, and in the coming days, he'll be meeting with the contractors regarding the complete repairs. I think you talked about that. And the sprinkler company's working to determine the cause of the frozen pipe, if possible. And I want to close with just a few words about community. We've already had an offer of lunch for the Frederick staff, a group wanting to bring in lunch. Today was late start, and throughout the district, and actually, Paul, why don't you talk for a moment about that, what staff was saying to you during late start?
Certainly. So this morning I was scheduled to meet with all the K-8 literacy teachers, which you'll hear about a little bit later. And so Frederick staff weren't able to attend because they needed to be at their staff meeting to learn about what the day was going to be like. So I shared the news. They had already heard it through a district communication about the challenges at Frederick. And then after my presentation to all the K-8 teachers, then I went to every grade level to check in on them. And most of the grade level said, what does Frederick need? What do the teachers need? How can we share? What do we need to get them? Tell them we're thinking of them, we're sending our love. And I think that just speaks to the community that we're in, that all the other buildings, I think we're probably happy it wasn't them, but they also want to jump in and support in every way. So I think that, you know, everyone was stressed, but they wanted to make sure I shared it. So I shared it with as many people as I could. And it's just nice to hear that the district, all the schools were railing behind to see what they needed. I was with first grade and they said, well, what supplies? I don't know what supplies they even use, but what supplies can we share?
Yeah.
So it was cute.
Thanks, Paul. And then finally, regarding all of this, I just want to share this very brief story. So I was over at Frederick this morning as a part of that staff meeting, and when that staff meeting broke up, of course, you know, people are milling about, they're talking about, you know, what are they going to do for remote learning and talking about cleanup and all of that. And there were about maybe 6 or 7 of us standing together in a hallway. And one of the teachers said, you know, I just got this new order of spiritware in. And I think it was on my floor. You know, I wonder what happened to my spiritware. And we were kind of laughing a little like that's not the most important thing. But kind of it is, right? Kind of it is. Because I looked around and realized that every single Frederick staff member that was standing in front of me, well, yep, show the video, or they were all wearing Frederick spiritware. And if you look at it, every single one is different. So they were from all different years. We've got all these people from Frederick who've been there for such a long time. I saw the communications that went out last night. So unless one teacher sent out a message that said, hey, everybody wear your spiritware, which I don't think happened, this just happened organically. That concept of, hey, we are Frederick. And that was so very meaningful to me, and I wanted to share it with all of you because this is how the staff members of this school district, this whole community, pulls together with an identity when we have a crisis. And so that's the last thing I wanted to let you know about this current situation at Frederick. Let's take questions, and then we'll go on to other topics. Anybody have any questions about what we have going on or what we think is going to be happening moving forward?
I have a question. You kind of touched on it. That sounds like you don't know the exact cause of this. It's clear that it wasn't one of the
Not yet.
coldest days we can have in northern Illinois, and yet we had a pipe burst we suspect from a frozen pipe. I don't want to ask you to speculate. Just, I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about what you know about what happened?
So we had in our fire sprinkler company right away, and it's the speculation that the heads froze over on that side, and we don't know if it's from the drain being plugged on it or if it is on the inspector's end of it, pipe of it. It's a dry system. So on a weekly basis, we go and we have to just open it up, make sure that there's no water in it. But we don't open up on the inspector's side, we open up on the drain side of it. And we don't know if any water's backing up. The pipe could be pitched back and in a trap. We got the heads changed, and now that the water is cleaned up, they will be back to take a further examination of it to see if they can determine exactly what it was that caused that issue.
So you saying that it's a dry system explains a lot. I was wondering if it was indicative of some other sort of situation in our attics not being the temperature that they ought to be, but it's normal for the attics to be freezing. It's just not normal for the system to have water in it.
That's correct. So in the attics, we have dry systems so that there's no water in the pipes, similar to freezers and coolers that have fire protection in it. Underneath the ceiling in tempered spaces, we have wet systems. Also, with it being a dry system, we need to hold X amount of pressure in there. So the compressors come on, and anybody who knows compressed air, it produces moisture. If you have a leak in the system, and the systems are big, so they do tend to leak some air. It runs and it builds up that moisture. the temperatures vary in the attics, hot, cold, hot, cold. It all produces moisture. So over time, between the moisture, unconditioned spaces, you get rust, you get multiple things. And then if the water can trap back and hold there, unfortunately, that will happen. Now, one of the things is the day before, it was very windy out. If anybody remembers, I know it's kind of tough to remember it, but it was very windy. About 2 o'clock in the morning, the temperatures dropped, the wind came in. A parent or somebody, I don't know exactly who it was, sent us a picture of actual shingles up on the roof going like this. Do keep in mind, in our 1 to 3 year, that is the roof that's the #1 on the list to get replaced. But the wind was hitting right over that exact spot. Now, could that, and it was 10 degrees outside, could that air have come right up underneath through the eaves? How is the insulation at that point in time? Over the years, there has been animals in the attic that have come up through the eaves. I believe it was before my time, but raccoon fell through the ceiling in the multipurpose room. Just, it's part of it, unfortunately. So any of it's possible over the time, and the air trapped up through it. Between the tempered space and the attic, there is gypsum board up there. So it's not like that hot air actually gets up to that spot. Here nor there, that should not necessarily have happened. It's built so that that doesn't happen.
Well, thank you for being on the case the last 24-plus hours, and I'm sure we'll get the full autopsy when all the facts are known and lessons learned and et cetera that we can apply to our other buildings. Thank you, Adam.
Absolutely.
I had a question. So, like Mr. LaCroix, thank you so much for your prompt and thorough response to date on this matter, and I hope that you get a lot of good rest this evening. I just wanted to know if I'm if I'm thinking about this the right way, but I know we just had like Train come in, they did like this really holistic system and walk through each of the buildings and inspection and such. Was that area part of the inspection, or would have been off because it wasn't necessarily a space where we're as concerned about air quality regulation as we are in the classrooms?
Completely two totally different ends of the
Okay.
spectrum. That's up in the attic,
Okay.
and it's an untempered area. There's no heating, no cooling. You have ridge vents up at the top of the roof, and you've got eaves vents so that it comes up underneath, and it gets rid of that hot air that's up there and dissipates it.
Okay,
Has two totally different things.
good deal. Thank you. I'm learning about ridge vents personally the hard way, by the way. So.
They're important.
Any other questions? Nope.
All right. We have more topics, but Adam, go home. Be with your family. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Night.
Thank you, Adam.
All right. Last Saturday, we had our second vaccine clinic. Well, two of them, one at Prairie View, one right here at GMS. We had, here at GMS, 103 pediatric vaccines given out, 55 adults, so nearly 160 here at GMS. And at Prairie View, 138 pediatric and 59 adults, so nearly 200 total. So we were able to vaccinate about 360 people. That was really exciting. And I do want to thank Mr. Lewis and Mr. Woke and Dr. Diaz and Mr. Wildman, along with Dr. Diaz, along with three of our principals, Ms. Zaras, Mrs. Morgan, and Mr. Smith, who are all helping out at those as well. Yes, and I was there as well, yes. So that went well. I do want to share some updates from our equity committee. I think we shared with you recently that we have new committee members who will be joining us. So we decided for the month of December, instead of having a regular meeting, we would hold two kind of mini meetings for those new people coming on to give them a chance to get the flavor of the committee and kind of like a little bit of a onboarding. So this past Monday, a few of us met with about 6 or 7 new committee members. I know Paul and a few other committee members are going to be meeting with about 6 or 7 other new committee members, and then we'll all be together in January. It's really exciting. We have very, very accomplished new members, including parents who do really deep equity work in their own professional lives. So that's really, really, very nice. So it's a great direction for our committee. And speaking of committees, I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Wildman to talk about the Safety and Security Committee.
Thank you very much. The District Safety and Security Committee will have its first meeting on Friday at 1 p.m. We will have members of the administration, teachers, members of the PSFP, as well as police from Grayslake, Round Lake Beach, and Round Lake. The meeting was due to be held at Frederick, but will now be held at Park. We plan to meet quarterly moving forward and to make recommendations for improvements to keep our students, staff, and the community safe. Once established, it will be the goal to present annually to the Board of Education on our progress.
Thank you. And Mr. Lewis, also a committee to talk about.
So I was asked to talk about, and I already mentioned it a little bit earlier, we've been working on our literacy PDT, and so I use a lot of acronyms. So PDT stands for Planning and Design Team. As part of our strategic plan and of our ESSER funds, we've allocated money for consideration for new literacy materials, specifically for culturally responsive and updated materials, which we're excited about. As you all know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and subs are very, very challenging to come by. So we're doing things not in our typical way. So we have had 2 meetings so far, actually a day and a half worth of meeting with a group of administrators, instructional coaches, and reading specialists to begin the work. And so we have begun to write, and some of them are in the audience at the moment for another reason, but they've been helping along with it. So we're working on a literacy plan, a guiding document to help us know what we're looking for in literacy instruction and the materials that we would like to see updated or revised. And so we felt like it was important to have a long-term goal and not just start looking at the fun stuff, looking at materials first, as that can cause some issues. I'm going to read one of the things. Everything is draft because we know we need to have teachers on the committee. That's very, very important. But the vision statement that we have as a draft that was worked on up until about 10:30 last night. So we were busy on it. And currently, the vision statement for District 46 literacy. The vision of literacy instruction in CCSD 46 is based in educational equity that empowers learners to value and understand reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills using culturally responsive practices and evidence-based approaches in order to become contributing citizens who critically interpret their world and effectively communicate throughout college, career, and life. So we're pretty proud of the draft, but know it might still need some wordsmithing. Hopefully you heard some connections to our district mission and vision and values as well, because we tried to overlay them because we wanted it to be compatible. So what we did today is I met with Amanda Woodruff, my colleague and partner in crime in all of this. We met with all of the K-8 literacy teachers. So we had a very big Google Meet and having everyone, and we reviewed what we have done so far to give everyone an update. We have provided what the draft plan is. We talked about the timeline. We talked about the funding sources. We talked about some of the potential ideas moving forward, with the whole understanding that we need more teachers involved in it. So we're working on how to make that happen, because we had the 2 meetings with 2.5 subs total, and we had over 25 staff members. So there was a lot of creative work to get all of that many of people, but we still need more people, because a K-8 literacy decision is not something, it's just for a few people to make decisions. So we have some plans for a survey to go out for all staff members together to give us input. We're thinking about some focus groups in each of the buildings so that teachers have an opportunity to talk directly with the committee members. We want to gather as much information as we can, so that was really very, very helpful, I think. Thankfully, the committee yesterday, we met yesterday afternoon, helped me figure out what our message was, because it wasn't just my message, it was our message. And so they helped me create the information and I put it together. But it was a good thing. We are going to do the same presentation tomorrow morning because the Frederick staff weren't able to be there, and they said, we want to hear it. And so we're doing the presentation specifically for the Frederick staff again tomorrow. We said it can wait. No, they said we want to hear it. So I'm happy about that. We're going to continue with it. It's just exciting to think about, and we're thinking about other creative ideas to bring the staff together, either with release time with creative staffing in the buildings, potentially paying staff for after contract hours in lieu of doing it during the day. So we're trying to find every possible way to be able to make this important work happen. So it is very exciting, lots to think about. I'm thankful of the staff who's been willing to help us and then give us feedback moving forward. So I think the message is we haven't made any decisions, but we're getting a really nice framework to know how to make decisions in the future. I'm glad to answer any questions.
I have just a quick one. I'm just curious if it would make sense, or it's not really a question. I'm just wondering if librarians, public librarians, or any of the book fair people are involved with the PDT. And again, just a thought. So it's not really even a question.
Perfect.
Anyone else? Okay.
Okay. I have two grants that I want to highlight that were recently awarded to our schools through some staff members. The first came from Foundation 46. So during the pandemic, there was kind of a lull with Foundation 46. They did a beautiful job of helping purchase some hotspots for families, but in terms of being able to do other kinds of work, it was hard during the pandemic. They are in the process of kind of a revitalization, but in the meantime, they just awarded a grant to a teacher who had applied for a grant way back in, I think, the spring of 2020, before the shutdown. And so they just awarded it to her. This is for Brooke Rowley, the art teacher over at Prairie View. Thank you. Okay, a moment. Prairie View, and it's $1,000 for an art library. So I spoke with Brooke today. She's very, very excited about that. And the other one is over at Frederick School, wouldn't you know? And it is a $200 grant from an organization called Roots and Shoots. It's a mini grant. Hold on, I have the information in front of me. So this was written by the Kindness Club sponsors. That's Becky Payleitner and Laura Golden. It was submitted to the Jane Goodall Foundation to help clean up around the pond in the back of the school. And so they were awarded this $200 grant, so they're very excited about that. And the very last thing I wanted to share as a part of this extremely lengthy superintendent's report is I wanted to highlight a new podcast that we have called D46 Inspires. And board, I already shared this information to you in written form, but I wanted to have a moment to speak about it publicly as well. So Katie O'Brien, who just so happens to be here tonight with some of her fantastic friends. Agreed. Katie is our teacher on special assignment, also known as a TOSA. She's in charge of our mentoring program and our Title I program. This is a new role for Katie. She was previously one of our amazing instructional coaches. She also unexpectedly took on the role of keeping our quarantine tutor program organized this year when that became an urgent need. And I said, Katie, kind of like that. But along with all of that, she has chosen to start this very inspirational project. a podcast that highlights the incredible teaching and learning that is happening in our school district. So the first episode is already out, and I know more are coming. In the first episode, Katie interviewed former District 46 student and current Meadowview third grade teacher, and it's the same person, Shelby White. She talks about how District 46 has impacted her. So then right after this first episode came out, a really exciting thing happened. I'm going to hand that over to Paul to talk about.
So I'm going to fill in some details behind the scenes to get to that exciting moment. So Katie and I were working on her professional goal, and we talked about all kinds of things, and Katie's brain was twirling and spinning, and she was trying to think of all kinds of things. About the same time, Katie, along with some of the other instructional coaches, had been able to see a national, international, incredible speaker named George Couros. And so some of you may know that name as his book is about the innovator's mind and curiosity, all kinds of things. So he's a very active blogger and a podcaster and speaker. You know, we did get the little message, Paul, couldn't he be our speaker? Yes, for $10,000 and 3 years' notice, maybe, Katie, maybe. And so she was pushing, well, how do we do this? The instructional coaches have been doing some discussions about books that we had bought from them. So all of that happened. She reached out to him for some advice about her podcast because he had been encouraging this project to go from his podcast. And so she said, I contacted him. He responded and gave her a bunch of good ideas and some suggestions, said, try this and do this. And then she sent the podcast to him, got it, he picked it up, and he actually publicized it in his podcast, in his newsletter and his email to celebrate Katie's work, but then also to celebrate the district and to encourage others to do amazing things like that. Holy gosh, when George Couros even knows your email, Katie, wow. I mean, that's a big deal. So it's just, those are the kind of really exciting things. And I can't be more proud. You know, she and her there's teammates, colleagues, friends here, you know, it was pretty big excitement. Whatever that was 3 weeks ago, the podcast that Mr. Vipond had helped. Also, he's been behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, and helping with all of it. We all listened as the instructional coach, and we were like blown away. Couldn't believe how great it was. And then, wow, George Couros makes a comment back. So that was the surprising, amazing, incredible gift, along with just a really nice piece of work.
Thanks, Paul. So as Katie reminds us in the introduction of her first podcast, she says, it is more important now than ever that we take time to recognize, reflect on, and celebrate the everlasting impact of teachers. So I know I certainly could not agree more. Katie, I'm so thankful to you. I'm thankful to Chris Vipond and also Leslie Armstrong-McLeod, who helped make this project a reality. They both worked really hard on it. So please stay tuned for more episodes as Katie interviewed students and also students, right, and staff. There's 2 more already taped, is that right?
We have episode 2 coming out this week.
Ooh, okay. So great. It's about time, right, that we really share our news. So thank you so much, Katie. All right, and yeah, let's give a hand. I agree. Thank you. And that is the end of the superintendent's report. And Team Katie, I just want to mention, we'd love for you to stay, but it's warm in here, and almost everything we're going to talk about for the rest is money. So there we go. But do what you like. But we'll certainly all understand if you need to get ready for your day tomorrow. All right, and that's the end of the superintendent's report.
All right, I want you to know that was like a half-hour report.
I know.
You were on the clock.
I know. I'll make up for it another way. Be fast on the end.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the addendum, personnel report addendum that was sent earlier this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Braden,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. All right, next is a motion, or we're moving on to the action items. Next, I need a motion to approve the resolution for adoption of the Teachers Retirement System of the State of Illinois Supplement Savings Plan. And briefly here, so from what I gather, and Chris, you can
Do you
correct
want
me
Chris
if,
to talk? Yeah, Chris can
sure.
jump in if you like.
I was just going to say, from what I gather, and Chris can correct me, is this is similar to a 401K that is being, that was signed into law by the state level to provide a voluntary savings plan for the teachers. We really don't have much of a choice but to implement it.
That's correct, yeah.
See? I was paying attention.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Weedman,
Aye?
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
and Albert.
Aye.
Okay, next is a motion to approve a resolution declaring the intention to issue $9.1 million working cash fund bond for the purpose of increasing the district's working cash fund and directing that notice of such intention be published in a manner provided by law. Would you like to expound on it, Chris?
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. Okay, this evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, you're about to make an historic, monumental decision in the history of the district. As Liz Hennessy explained to you last month, the district has had the capacity to issue working cash bonds using a debt service extension base since 1994. We've not done this. This evening, by adopting the resolution of intent and ordering a public hearing for January 12th, we are beginning the journey to invest in our schools and fund our 3-year capital plan as presented in the following agenda. The proceeds of the bonds will help us address the critical facility improvement projects over the next 3 years, including roof replacements, paving, and HVAC projects. Do I have any questions from the board about the resolution as presented? No? Okay.
No questions? I'll make the motion.
I'll
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye?
and Nash.
Aye.
All right, next I need a motion to approve the 3-year priority capital plan as part of the long-range facilities plan, which is part of what we just approved for money. The same presentation we've seen the last 3 times, I believe.
So moved.
Second.
Albert,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Aye. Okay, next I need a motion to approve the next steps and updated board agreements. This is the final step to our board training we did 6-8 weeks ago, roughly, to where we're just updating our board agreements, codify them into what we do.
So moved.
I'll second.
Braden,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye?
and Nash.
Aye.
Okay, we are moving on to unfinished business. I believe I got them all. Yep. And that is the discussion of the technology goal.
Good evening, Board of Education. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to share some updates with you regarding the technology goal for the strategic plan. As we recall, the technology goal, specific to the strategic plan, is to create a comprehensive master technology plan for the district. As we break down that overarching goal, we'll start on the left side of this diagram, similar to the diagrams that you've seen from the other goal areas before. I shared previously that a needs assessment was shared with our staff. That data has since been analyzed by our newly formed technology PDT and our planning and design team. We're fortunate to have the technology PDT meet a few weeks ago to review the needs assessment data and discuss our next steps as a group. While, as Mr. Lewis explained, it is challenging to find time during the school day for this full group to meet consistently, small cohorts continue to meet to work on the master technology plan for the district. It is my hope that we will be able to share that plan in early 2022. As we would expect, this plan will have some specific details in place, but will be more of a framework for the next 5 years that sets the focus and priorities for our district. Since we want this to continue to be a meaningful technology plan, there will be room for updates and tweaks along the way. The next column, going over to column 2 there, focuses on classroom technology. I'm actually going to skip this column for a moment as I want to elaborate more on this section in a few minutes. So going over to column 3, the student and staff devices column focuses on things and keeps things pretty simple. We will lay out the device refresh cycles and commit to those cycles to ensure that our students and staff all have an adequate and functioning device. This has been something that we've caught up nicely on over the last year and a half, but we'll continue to commit to that in the future. Finally, that last column on this screen is the infrastructure column. This is the least glamorous but yet very important section of the technology plan, and it will focus on infrastructure improvements as well as cybersecurity and cyber safety. There will be some major infrastructure improvements that will be needed in the next 2 to 3 years. These improvements will include upgrading switches, wiring, and access points across the entire district in order to keep up with ever-evolving wireless technology. The good news is that we do have the ability to utilize E-rate funds for much of this work. As a reminder, for E-rate, the district will pay for the entire project up front and will be reimbursed at a rate of 50%. Based on our current E-rate allotment, we have approximately $600,000 available to spend, and we will be refunded 50% of that. Finally, on this column, in the coming weeks and months, you'll likely hear more from me in regards to cybersecurity. There are a number of new requirements that our cybersecurity insurance provider has asked all districts to implement in the near future, and we're in the process of finalizing an RFP in collaboration with Mr. Wildman and the business office to seek professional services support in implementing many of these new requirements. Additionally, we will be implementing required changes such as mandatory two-factor authentication for all staff, as well as phishing and cybersecurity awareness training. So again, this column is not as exciting as the other columns, but it is equally important. Now, as I mentioned, I want to come back to column 2 there, the classroom technology column, and spend a little bit of time talking about that because I feel that it is one of our most urgent topics to discuss as far as the technology goal. We know that our current smart boards across the district have reached the end of their useful life. We also have projectors in the majority of our classrooms that are no longer providing conducive learning environments and experiences. This information is evident from a number of sources, including personal and professional observations, the needs assessment data from our teachers, as well as inventory data showing the ages of the devices and equipment. At the beginning of this year and continuing through even as most recently as yesterday, teachers continue to submit help desk tickets who are experiencing failing projectors in their classrooms. In most cases, we are able to swap broken and non-functioning projectors for used refurbished models. The need and urgency of this project is evident, and I believe the timing is right now as we have funding opportunities available to us that will allow us to greatly improve the quality of instruction in our classroom and technology across the district. At the technology planning and design team meeting that I mentioned earlier, we had an opportunity to see a demonstration of a new interactive flat panel. I want to pause here, talk about an interactive flat panel for just a second. It's basically, we can think of it as a 75-inch touchscreen TV. A lot more features to it, and I hope in the coming weeks to be able to have one in here that we can look at and highlight some of those features. But it has the ability to wirelessly connect to the board, as well as some interactive whiteboard software built into it, and just provides a lot of additional benefits over our current technology. As we go through this, I want to continue. Sorry, lost my spot. With overwhelming support from the technology planning and design team, we've decided to move forward with a pilot of these interactive flat panels. This is a very small scale pilot. We're taking advantage of carryover funds from last year's digital equity grant, as well as first-time buyer pricing from the manufacturer, to pilot one flat panel for each of our schools. The cost of this pilot is approximately $18,000. This order was placed last week, and we anticipate the panels will arrive later this week or early next week. The information specialists are anxiously awaiting the arrival of these panels, and when they do arrive, we will take some time as a group to kind of get some hands-on experience and then deploy the panels to the building so that they can begin being used. Using the panels in the library, shared spaces, and classrooms into the new year will allow us to get some useful and authentic feedback from our staff. We'll review that feedback throughout the pilot and hope to make a recommendation in early February about the next steps in the classroom display refresh plans. I would like to reiterate, now we can go to the next slide, a couple of things that are extremely important in this process. Providing equitable technology across the district, providing upgraded technology to support meaningful teaching and learning, including the needs of our staff in the decision-making process, as well as seeking their feedback throughout the process, planning for current needs, our needs today, but also focusing on the future, and that entire time remaining financially responsible. I talked briefly about the interactive flat panels. I want to highlight just a couple more things that make this advantageous for the district at this point. The improved video quality over our current devices, our current projectors and smartboards, improved audio, consistent brightness. We don't have to worry about dimming of bulbs and dimming over time. No shadows as we experience with ceiling-mounted projectors. The interactive version does not require calibration as our current smartboards do, and that's always a challenge for our teachers. And then this particular model has some additional benefits, such as an antimicrobial coating on the glass, so always just some of the little perks that we'll continue to talk about in the coming months and highlight some additional features of the panels. Next steps. As we take a look at the coming weeks, we'll continue to gather feedback from the pilot. We'll also finalize details for a possible future order. And then, as I mentioned, we'll plan to bring this item back to the Board of Ed in February. We'll talk a lot more about the budget piece of this in January and February, as we're still working on final numbers and inventory counts for the number of interactive flat panels that we may need, as well as giving our teachers some hands-on time with the panels. However, we do want to share the funding sources that we are planning to dedicate to this refresh. This slide shows the ways that we plan to blend and braid various funding sources, just as ISB has recommended to us. The table you see there shows a very small portion of funds from ESSER 2, almost $400,000 from ESSER ARP, which was shared tentatively a couple months ago now at a ESSER update. And then we also have funds from this year's digital equity grant, as well as local funds that were included in this year's technology budget. Again, I want to pause and say that the final cost of this project is still to be determined, but we wanted to share this information as we know it is a large financial commitment. And with that, I'd like to answer any questions on any of that you may have.
I have one real quick, if I may. With these new boards for lack of a better term, right? Boards, TVs. Where would they fit in, and would they enhance the remote learning option that we may have to go to? Knock on wood that we don't have to go back to, but it's always a possibility in the future. It was similar to what happened with the sprinkler here. How will those integrate into the remote classroom and enhance it?
That's a good question. There are a bunch of built-in features that would make remote teaching a lot nicer. It's a challenging situation, but it would help. So there's built-in recording features on the panel, as well as built-in microphones. So we can actually the teachers could use the panel to record a lesson and draw everything out nicely on the board, go through explaining a math problem or diagramming of sentences, whatever the case might be, and record that and send it out to students. There's also a broadcast feature, which would allow teachers to broadcast whatever is on the panel to student devices wherever they may be in the world. So whatever is being seen on the screen could be shared if we're in the same room. We can all see the same content on our screens here, or we can share it in remote learning environments. So the stories from districts that have these panels already and have been using them through remote teaching last year are sharing similar stories.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. The first is about the cybersecurity. I know that, Chris, you talked about a security team and you've got a technology team. Is there integration in terms of cybersecurity and physical security, or are they separate?
I'll briefly chime in and then feel free, Mr. Wildman. I am the collaboration between the two, so I will certainly be serving on the safety and security team. The other
There you go.
the other piece that I'd say to that is that we know some specific areas that are required, but the RFP and the seeking of professional services in this case will certainly kind of guide us and give us the support that we need to go forward on the cybersecurity side of things.
Gotcha, thank you. I was just curious about that one. I'm a big fan of outdoor learning, so I'm curious, the 49,132 from ESSER, I think is that the same money that's for outdoor connectivity?
Good question. So I continue to, and Mr. Wildman, Mr. Lewis, and I have been working on that budget slide quite a bit, and some of the E-rate funds that I discussed, the outdoor wireless access can be covered under E-rate funds. So this was kind of the utilization of that blending and braiding, and hey, these funds could go towards the panels because the E-rate funds would not cover the panels. So that was kind of the current thinking, was that we could utilize that 49,000 for the panels and really help us there, while still accomplishing the outdoor wireless connectivity piece, but using other funds to do that.
Gotcha, okay. And then the last question I have, and I'm, again, just trying to keep all this straight in my head. I know the capital plan, the 3-year capital plan includes the IAQ assessment, that building envelope, and then also modernizing classrooms. Is this related to modernizing classrooms, or again, are they separate?
I believe we'll mesh up at some point, but and again, kind of that collaborative effort once we get to that stage of the modernization plan. But as I kind of outlined tonight, I don't feel like this technology portion can wait until that point. So wanting to move forward and in as flexible of a way moving forward with our classroom technology as possible.
Thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I have a couple questions. So thanks for all the work on this technology plan. I just love how methodical it is and agile at the same time. I love the fact that we're looking at piloting as opposed to a total investment, and then leveraging those use cases to inform next steps. So that's excellent. I was curious as it pertains to the investments. I think I heard you say the digital equity grant will cover the pilot. I think it's about 18,000 in there. So are there any indemnities? So let's say we get through pilot and we find that it's just not a good fit, or to your point earlier about the evolution, the rapid evolution of technology, something else is out there, do we have the capabilities to recover any of that, or it's an investment for the purpose of the pilot?
That's a good question. At this point, I feel comfortable with the devices in, if we were to make it through a pilot and say, this is not the right device for us, it still becomes a for lack of a better word, a 75-inch display that could be used not unlike the one that is here in this learning center that has been used for a couple of years. So at absolute worst case, we still have nice displays, 4K quality displays that can be used in our buildings for other common spaces and display purposes. So while the flat panels have so much more capability than just that, if we end up with that, it's still a decent investment long-term.
Okay, good deal. And then my next question is around the savings targets resulting from the benefits that were highlighted. So I know you said January, February was when we can expect the full budget. So if you're not positioned to project that now, that's fine, but just as part of the incorporation of pulling data together, it would be helpful for me to see the offset in terms of where we're saving, moving away from the projectors, the lights, the maintenance, et cetera, to this new digitized devices.
Yes, and I will work on more of that for the next time that I talk, but the one thing that I will mention tonight in reviewing some of the specs on these panels, our typical projector, industry standard, shows about 20,000 hours worth of use out of a typical standard projector that we may have in our classrooms. These panels are rated for 50,000 hours worth of use. So in itself, there is some added slightly more, but again, this is the time to be looking at panels. 2 or 3 years ago, the cost of panels was so much higher that districts were still purchasing projectors at that point. But now it has come down to a reasonable price that makes now the right time to put the investment in and have them last longer. And again, without I'm going to trip on the word degradation, the dimming of the brightness and the loss of picture and audio quality over the years, as well as essentially no maintenance throughout the time that we own it.
Okay, excellent. And again, I love how the plan is tied to the board policies and connecting the dots for the board and also for our community at large. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about the intersection of curriculum and technology. I understand that, you're piloting this and you're going to kind of see what comes of it, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to give you a chance to express it. How much discussion has been had to this point to know what curriculum enrichment technologies you wanted to target to get to this point? So if you could just talk to me a little bit about what's gone on so far to inform where you are at this point.
Yeah, so the needs assessment data that was shared with all of our teachers, and the needs assessment that all of our teachers completed, and then the data that was reviewed by our PDT that had info specialists, a couple classroom teachers, a couple administrators, and as well as Amanda Woodruff from our teaching and learning department. And we reviewed different sections of that assessment from all sorts of lenses. So one was specifically focusing on displays, but then other sections included professional learning, the teaching and resources that our students have access to, and a few different topic areas. And all of those kind of come back to how can we continue to support our teachers and the teaching and learning in our classrooms. And certainly there will be some additional, and as we continue to look at additional ELA resources, the collaboration will continue to be there. And I will say that we had an art teacher that was was on the PDT who was basically jumping up and down about seeing this flat panel and the enhancements that it could bring to her curriculum, and the built-in features of you take a paintbrush that has a wider brush and you make your strokes. So as they talk about strokes in painting, and it changes on the panel as you do that with the paintbrush. And Dr. Diaz is nodding along. She was in the room when Tina was very excited about seeing those things. So we know that there will be those continued curricular kind of implementations, and the built-in math tools stand out on the panel itself. And again, the recording and the teaching aspect, but then still having the ability to have students up and engaging with the panels during small group time or centers activities, and being able to utilize those tools. One of the nice things about it is, while it is a shift from smart specific software, that's a huge benefit because it's not specific software. It can be interactive with any interactive website or any there's wireless touchback capabilities. Anything I can do on my device, I can control up at the panel. And so those integrations will continue as we continue to just learn the devices.
Do you have any concerns about this proof of concept period that, is there a plan for testing out these, kinds of things that can be done on this? The proof of concept period's what, through February? And that's a pretty short amount of time, and you'd have to almost put forth some sort of a plan to test this kind of thing and that kind of thing, or are you just kind of letting the people who are part of the team kind of run with it? What's the plan in that area?
I will share that I have some past experience from my previous district in this area, and I have since continued conversations with that district that has rolled out a full implementation of this similar panel. So the conversations from them, as well as a couple other districts farther south, continue to kind of reinforce that if I agree with you, in the short kind of limited time, which is, and I'll share my limited timeline on this project, is simply to ensure that we can roll this out over the summer, if that's the decision that we feel is right, and making sure that we can, of course, fight the supply chain still and get the devices ordered and on time. So I do believe that in a short month and a half to 2 months will be enough to really give us a feel for, will this be right for us?
With data not only from the work of this group, but also from the districts that you referenced. So
correct. And we've talked as the PDT, we've talked about site visits. I know that I have the experience. I've seen them firsthand. But if subs line up, and with any current pandemic protocols, if we're able to do site visits to those other districts, we would like to do that, and there's an interest to do that. So those things are all still in the works to make sure that, again, we can get any questions answered from the team prior to fully recommending a path forward.
Members are very interested to get going, and I think they are already starting a list of all the things they want to try. So when they come in, and I don't know if you shared, it's going to be on a cart, it's movable at the moment, so it's not so that lots of staff will have the opportunity to get support to try it. And so I love that idea, because if it was mounted in one classroom, it's contingent on the schedule of that room. But being able to be mobile, that's why I think you even talked about bringing it here to a meeting, so that we can see it and try it out here. But I think those are the cool things too.
Yes. Thank you.
I would probably just say that as soon as kids get it, they're going to be the experts probably very quickly, and they'll figure out every little nuance of every feature.
As it should be, right? I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I don't have a question, but first of all, I wanted to thank Mr. Vipond and Mr. Lewis and Mr. Wildman for your collaboration on identifying how we can make the most efficient use of the funds that we have available. So thank you for that. And I also wanted to comment, I was just thinking, Chris, as you were at the very beginning talking about the intent to have students to have equitable experiences across the district. And I'm remembering my first walks through our buildings 3 years ago and noting that we had all of this different equipment throughout the district, that we have, smart boards some places and different kinds of projectors other places, and it being really explained that, well, we kind of came by that material or that equipment slowly and through many different avenues, including PTOs and all kinds of different ways. And so I'm just glad that that's not where we are now, and that we're looking at using these funds to ensure that all of our students have access to these materials, whether or not they happen to go to a school where the families can collaborate to provide the funds through a PTO or something like that. So thank you for bringing that to us. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, we are now up to new business. First item is discussion of student fees for early childhood tuition and facility rental for the school year next year. Chris?
The Board of Education annually approves fees as per board policy. I presented a budget calendar to you in June. I know that Miss Miller's a fan. She told me she has it on a wall. In the proposed, which you approved, with that proposed that we discuss them on December 8th and we adopt them the following month on January 12th. This evening we are bringing the following fees for discussion: registration and technology fees, student extracurricular fees, preschool tuition and transportation fees. They're related. It's not transportation fees. It's related to the transportation for the tuition. And finally, our facility fees. The administration is recommending that these fees for next year remain the same as this year. That's a no increase. We feel that this makes sense to our community and our families today. We continue as a school district to waive fees under the law using the free and reduced lunch application. This includes income guidelines from the state of Illinois. If families qualify for this, all registration, technology, and textbook charges are waived. Families that do not qualify for this application may apply for the hardship waiver. The hardship waiver is available on the district's website, business office, community resources. It's there for anybody in English and Spanish. Do you have any questions from the board regarding the fees as presented?
I have a couple questions. I'm unfamiliar with what illuminations is. Can someone explain that to me, please?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you quite well.
Illuminations, I wasn't familiar with that activity, and I wanted to learn more about it. It's a GMS Frederick activity.
I don't know what it is either. I'm sorry.
Okay. Does anybody know?
We'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
Okay.
I was also curious, just because I don't know how the fees are composed. I noticed that basketball, boys and girls, and then Science Olympiad is a lot more than some of the other activities, and I was just curious as to why that is.
So I think that has to do with the costs of those activities in terms of how it's paid, because we have to pay outside groups to be involved. I believe it has to do with that.
The referees, a great deal. And
That's correct.
the hours of intensive, the hours of those activities can go on and on and on. So those are pretty big time commitments.
Do you know if the National Science Olympiad charges a lot?
Yeah, that's actually what I was referring to before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And some of it is based on the amount of participants that can be in each sport. So like cross-country, they take everybody who doesn't participate in any other sport during that time frame. So there's, 100 of them, basically, that are running, so they can cut the cost down per person by that, because the cost overall is a lot less per person.
Thank you.
I do have a question real quick. We added technology for 3rd through 8th in the 2019-20 school year. That's when we originally went to Chromebooks for those grades.
That's my understanding, correct?
We were able to punt at the beginning of the pandemic for the school year and get Chromebooks for the remaining students. You may have to go back and look. I don't remember adding a technology fee at that point. We just kind of got them and passed them out. Is that something we need to revisit?
The only thing I'm aware of is what we did last year and this year in my review, so I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. Might be something we want to just kind of look at so that anybody that's kind of even across the board of who has a technology, that they're all getting that as well.
So I think the last time that we proposed a raise, an increase to these fees, we did some benchmarking with nearby districts and found that we were a little bit lower than most districts. We're not raising now. Do you have any idea where we are relative to other nearby districts on student fees?
I can get that data for you very easily. I could have it for the January 12th.
Could you repeat that again?
I could have that data for you for the January 12th board meeting.
And Illuminations appears to be the middle school choir, according to a
Oh,
quick
yes.
Google search.
Oh, great, thank you.
I don't want to get ahead of the equity audit, but I'm the person every year that brings our attention to the fact that even though we have a waiver and we have, the process for folks who are on free and reduced lunch to not pay, we also know that there are students who take themselves out of the equation when they see something, regardless of that being available, and say, that's not for me, because I know my parents don't want to have to fill out a waiver. It's not something that we want to identify ourselves with, et cetera. So I guess, I think in our long term, what I would love to see, I have a feeling it'll come up in the equity, and so that'll be a great point of discussion for us at that time. And what I would love to see long term is, and I know Mr. Wildman is working really hard at this, is that we are able to, at some point, offer fee-free extracurriculars because we're in a financial position to do so. And so, it's just another way, another reason why the work on our financial situation that you're doing is so important. So thank you.
Thank you. I actually see every hardship that comes to me, and I have not seen one since in my first 6 months here.
And that's
So,
exactly, I'm
I'm just
part of
reporting
the,
to you zero right
yeah,
now.
kids automatically take themselves out of the running for things before it ever gets to whether or not you're filling out a waiver. So I think something we just, I would like to see that as a goal, that this becomes a rounding error for us at some point, that we can say, we can offer fee-free extracurriculars. I think it would be, really put us above, a lot of other places in terms of being exceptionally equitable.
Just an idea, but one of the things that I've seen in other arenas is a fee set up where there's 3 options, and you can, so if my kid wants to play basketball, I can pay at cost, or I can pay for my kid and another kid, and then, or I can't pay. But having those 3 options might, I know it comes up a lot in the CEC where some families are like, show me who they are, I want to help, and I can't. So just an idea for a fee structure that might be a Band-Aid until we get to that point.
I didn't
Pretty
think
interesting.
about this until Ms. Braden's comment, because my son was interested in Science Olympiad, and it didn't come up in conversation until like months later, and I'm going through paperwork and I saw it, and I was like, hey, you love this, why didn't you bring it home? Why didn't you talk about it? And he's like, because it's $200 and something, Mom. So I think even kind of creating that increased awareness for our parents, because again, oftentimes the students may not be the ones to advocate that they need help, but even making sure that the parents have increased visibility into options that are available would be helpful.
I'm curious, Chris, if we wanted to pursue something like what Christy is suggesting, would we be able to approve these fees and then still pursue something like that? Because it wouldn't change what the fees are?
You know, the park district does that. You can add an extra $5 when you register your kid for something for that reason. It's just, you know, an extra click that you do.
In districts I've worked, they've added an additional drop down, say, would you like to make an additional donation just as you're checking out? So yes, we can look into that, for sure.
Sorry. Now that we're thinking about it, I actually think it was an option at GMS when one of my kids was there for the Chicago trip. I think we were able to select that. So there might be some precedent already.
So we will investigate that.
Mr. Wildman, do you have any idea what we collect in student fees every year? Like a gross number?
I do. I have them in front of me.
Did you?
So just name one, I got it. So for example, GMS spots these. FY20, we collected 30,600, dramatically decreased last year due to the pandemic, collected 12,000 this year. So I have them all in one beautiful chart, which I can share with you all.
Do you have the total?
I don't have the total, sorry.
You can't look at that sheet and add it in your head real fast?
No, I didn't. I'm just realizing I didn't sum it. I'm so sorry. And I cannot do that. It will be wrong. It will definitely be
Well,
wrong.
I got to tell you where I was going with that was just if the total number was available and we divided it by our student population, what would that number be? And if we could just, I don't know, thinking about charging that to all families. I know there's an element of fairness to, we're going to pay for what our kid does, but there's also the equitable argument to be made for, if it's $5, you know, I mean, that's pretty reasonable and palatable. If it's X divided by 3,800 and it comes out to $5, I think most people would be willing to pay. I don't know, maybe I'm way off that, but.
In some ways, it
another
would
thought.
almost be like a prepay because most of these things are for the older students,
Yes.
right? So people would just be,
Sounds like something to look into by all the around here. All right.
so, well, let me ask you this question, Chris. How, it feels to me like you're coming back to the board at
Yes,
the next
which is
meeting.
good.
So how far out can we push because I know fees are connected to registration and we're still working on our registration dates. I think that you and Chris were working on that too. So I'm wondering how far out can we push having an approved fee structure?
So we could bring it back. This is just for discussion here.
Right.
We wanted it to be approved in January. We could, I don't know I think February 2nd is the next board meeting after that.
After that, something like that.
From
So if
memory.
we,
So if we wanted to have more data, you wish to know as a comps to make the decision. My only ask is, are you asking for them to be increased based on the data? Because that's kind of what you might see if you're below. The recommendation from the administration is to keep them the same. And that's kind of what,
Now, everyone's looking at me, so I'm surmising that you've asked me a question, but I did not hear it.
okay.
So he's asking what type of recommendation you want. Do you want him to, when he gives you the data as far as the.
Are you seeking an increase based on the market in comparable districts? Because the recommendation we're presenting to you today for the following meeting is to keep them the same.
Well, I don't think I'm asking for an increase.
Okay.
I was just wondering what the total fees collected were for a school year.
Yep.
Divided by our student population, just to see what that number was. That's
I'll
all
give you
I've
that as
asked
soon as I
for,
have
about
this
anything
added,
else.
which
Right.
I apologize I didn't sum it.
well, and it could be an interesting, you also asked for how do we compare to other districts, right? So it could be we come at the next meeting with maybe the same recommendation, but this additional data, right? Board can consider that additional data, knowing that we'll look for approval of something at the February 2nd meeting, right? So perhaps the conversation that happens at the next meeting will then direct us towards what we should finally bring back on the 2nd. Okay, great.
Okay. Next, we have a discussion of the Durham busing contract for next year.
Oh, man. And on the best.
Can you hear the
Please.
disappointment?
Bring back technology. All right. All right, the district received their annual renewal for the upcoming school year, 22-23. Yes, we are really beginning conversations about next year. The annual increase as presented is 9.8%. The proposal is valid until February 1st, 2022. However, if the district issues a bid RFP, the proposal is valid until the due date of the bid, RFP, or February 1st, whichever comes first. Our annual spend is $2.5 million per year, so we're looking at a $250,000 annual increase. To assist the board this evening in this discussion, I wanted to lay out some options for you. So I'm going to go through three. First option is renew at 9.8. This would be approved by the board on January 12th, as our next board meeting, as I've just mentioned, is February 2nd, which is outside the proposal date. So that's option one. Option two is to negotiate with Durham. I've already tried, and the initial number I was given verbally was 10%. Durham responded that we can reduce the percentage by changes to the contract. This would be things like allowing our buses to age, allowing older buses to transport our kids, therefore reducing the capital spend. So there is a cost to this. There isn't a cost because this could result in greater breakdowns. I'm just throwing that out there. That's what happens when you run all the vehicles. Option three is to go out to public bid RFP. I'm not going to go into the differences between a public bid and an RFP, but to keep it very simple, a bid is a little bit more statutorily, hey, the lowest bid at RFP gives a little bit more flexibility to the district. So if we did do this, we would do an RFP. But this option does come with some risks. The 9.8% is based on a renewal from the current contract from 2008-2009, which has been renewed for 5 years and then renewed for another decade. Okay? So Durham is under no obligation, based on the date, plus the specifications of a new bid. It's very unlikely I'm going to get the 2008 bid packet, put it out there, and they're going to respond directly to it. So it's likely it's going to be different from 9.8%. I don't think they're going to go down. So that's my kind of thought on this. They're not going to go down from 9.8% just because we put it out to publicly bid. The high school last year went out to bid, and the only bid they received was from Durham, despite interest in the pre-bid meetings from other transportation companies. Mandatory or non-mandatory pre-bid meetings, doesn't matter which, that's when other transportation companies would come and designate their interest. They came to the meetings, but only one company actually followed through with an actual response. Their increase was 6.35 last year. Okay, so we're in a different inflation environment now. I am collecting data on upcoming renewals from other districts, but it is pretty early in the renewal time. So not a lot of districts like me, us, have had their renewal in their hand and are talking to it. I'm bringing this to you as early as I can. I would have loved to have had this done in October, November, but we were still negotiating this year's contract, and this is my first opportunity to do it with you. So I went back to Durham. I said, please give me the underlying reasons for the 9.8. So I'm going to read to you what they've sent to me, okay? I want you to understand that this is from Durham and it's not from me. Nationwide school bus driver shortages are expected to continue through 2022 at least. We are incurring unusually high expenses to recruit and train and retain drivers. Turnover is much higher, increasing our costs of replacing drivers or training new drivers. CPI has recently increased over 6% and is not expected to be temporary. CPI is currently trading at 6.2 through October. We'll receive the new CPI in the next few days. Okay? I don't know whether, I don't know whether it is temporary, that's their opinion. Reduced volumes. While we have reduced full-time workers and can eliminate variable costs, driver wages, fuel, maintenance, due to lower volumes, the fixed costs of operating our business remain. School volumes for routes are down. School-related trips are down by 1/3. Volumes for non-school related customers, public charters and corporate shuttles, are down by 900%. That's their number, not validated it. The more we are able to charge other customers allows us to charge school customers less. And finally, wage increases. Market wage pressures require that we increase driver, technician, and office staff wages higher than in the past. I'm aware that I've hit you with a lot of information and the options, but I'd love you to open up and discuss the options.
Well, each one of the contract renewals that we did with them did come with a cost of increase. It wasn't like we held on to the 08, 09 cost for the last 12 years. Each one of them came with an increase of some sort. And if I remember right, most of them were north of 3%. So to say that they're not keeping up when inflation at that point was on an average of 2 is not necessarily genuine on their end. 2, they just came to us and asked us to raise our stuff under this shared sacrifice, and now they're coming out with 1.5 times of the cost of current inflation for this next increase. It's kind of a hard slap to the face, if you ask me, when they stood in here and said that they were going to do everything they could. A little torn of which direction I would like to see us go, only because there is no guarantee that anything's going to be less. Do we know what the increases were for 127 for the next couple of years?
Theirs is a contractual increase because they've only just obviously approved, and I think it's 3%. I'll have to find out. I believe it's 3. So 6.35 was the increase from their previous contract, but theirs is contractually included in the first 3 years, and they'll have 2 renewals. So they know their increases for the next 5 years, well, at least 3.
I would be interested to see where, so if you, historically, if you went back to our 08, 09 contract, because we've been trying to keep consistent with 127 anyways, correct? If we went back and we compared what the increases were between the 2 districts with them, and then find out why a large increase for this one when they didn't get a large increase. Does that make sense?
Yes, so
You understand what I'm asking?
I do, yes.
Okay. Because I think that would be something that we could use to maybe better inform us as a board of which way we want to go. Is that okay, everyone?
So I want to come back to the options that have been generated, and I'm wondering if there's another set of options that we could create together if we use our IBB training and think about, kind of back up and go, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? And what are separate the interests and the positions, and then generate some more options so that we could, if we do have to negotiate with them, from what I'm understanding, we're kind of in a rock and a hard place because there aren't a lot of other vendors, or there aren't any other vendors. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what, there aren't any of the what?
I said, I think it feels like we're in between a rock and a hard place because there are no other bus companies around us.
Other bus companies. There are other bus companies that I can talk to, and they will probably show interest. It's whether they follow through and actually have the financial commitment if they don't have land in the area because they have to buy land.
Right.
Because they're having to drive really fast. So they have to put that in their cost in their proposal. So I can't tell you how many bus companies will bid. I can only tell you that when I talk to them, they tell me all the time, absolutely, we're interested. That's their automatic response. And then they're going to do their due diligence and respond based on the RFP that we put out.
I'm just wondering if there's an option to work with 127 to try to capture some of the federal funding for electric buses, so that if we could generate an option that would allow us to help Durham transform their company or their fleet over to electric buses and thus reduce gasoline and fuel costs. I don't know a lot about electric buses. I know it was an offering at III, but I didn't go to that one, so perhaps
There's
that's...
nothing in this renewal that has anything regarding electric vehicles.
No, that's what I'm saying. Is
Right.
that another option? Could we generate options 4, 5, and 6 going through our IBB process?
I don't know.
Is that a
I
possibility?
don't know the answer.
So I did go to that electric bus session at the III conference, And there seems to be a lot of funding out there through the state and the federal government, and it would be interesting to see if any of the other bus companies would be willing to look into that option, because it was pretty intriguing. We have solar panel arrays, and this Future Green Energy Initiative, Bus to Grid initiative was about turning buses that, for a majority of the time, sit there. They'd be plugged into the solar panel array somehow. I don't exactly know how it all works, but they could be charging, and then that could go back into the grid, and it might be a way to earn money. There seem to be a lot of possibilities that could work.
It sounds like to get there, we'd either have to convince a provider that operates in our area or wait for such a provider to come to our area. And it strikes me when you reported that D127 went out to bid and got one bid from Durham, something's off about the market. It almost seems non-competitive in localizations, where I'm not suggesting that there's anti-competitive behavior going on with these companies, but it seems like they all have their little corners of the suburban world where they operate. And it makes sense if you've made an investment in a bus depot or place, but this market doesn't seem fair and open to me,
Yeah.
which
and-
doesn't help us. I mean, and that's not a solution. That's just another problem statement. I get it.
We talked a little bit about that, I would say, and that, the bus companies talk about their difficulty in hiring, right? So they may be a little bit afraid to expand, knowing that they may not be able to hire drivers in other areas. We also talked about the complication of, so typically, bus companies will hire the drivers of the people in the community, right? That's how we have a lot of our drivers. So if it turned out that we went out to bid and another company won that bid, and so we had a new bus company, there could be the risk, and I think we just have to be aware of this, of having a difficulty getting drivers, because likely Durham would have to either let go their drivers that they have in this area and or bring them with them to another school district. That could happen. But if they let them go, whether or not those same drivers would be willing to be hired by another bus company is debatable. Who knows? So that's just another piece of risk that we need to recognize that we'd be assuming if we go out to bid. Not only might we be risking this particular agreement, right? Because it could come in at a higher agreement, but also we could be back to square one with not having enough drivers.
That's a really great comment. It's highly likely that they would return them all for their current clients, 127, and I think it's 60, and Bannockburn, the other districts that they serve out of Grayslake. So I don't think they'd let anybody go. I think they try and return them all, and that would be an obvious thing. We'd actually be in competition for drivers with 127. That would be the logical conclusion of that.
Yeah, with some of the appeals to those that are working that live in town or in the district, working for the bus company, it's in district, and they're not going very far. So turning around and then having to go out to District 60 might be a different mindset for them, because they're not serving their own community.
Agreed.
So.
Yep.
We don't know. It's a risk.
I have also heard in the past a district's decision on transportation to be described as a pendulum over time, right? You get sick of the increases in the bus company, and then you decide to bring it in-house. And then after a few years, you realize you don't want to be in the business of busing. And so you decide that you're going to, pay the experts to do it again, and so on and so forth. I don't think we should take that option off the table. And it might be, I don't know. I'm just thinking through some of the other comments I heard. It might be a way to think about the electric busing option as well. I don't particularly have a big appetite for getting in that business right now either. I don't think that that's what we want to specialize in. but I don't know. I think all options should be on the table right now.
Electric buses are pretty difficult to get right now. There's a huge backlog for people who are trying to buy them. So we'd have, if we wish to do that for the upcoming school year or even that, you're talking a multi-year plan to buy land, invest in a huge upfront capital, staffing. I can just tell you anecdotally that the district I left, I was in 112, the high school is paying their drivers $27 an hour, plus IMRF, plus benefits to drive. So you can pay what you want, but you're still paying those drivers, right? You've still got to pay those drivers the market rate. That doesn't go away. And the districts which are paying have no driver issues. The districts which are paying 22, 23, 24, which are below this, drivers move, and that's what's happening. Anecdotally, I can also tell you that when I've talked to at least 2 other companies, that I asked them, I said, hey, what are you thinking about bidding on new business? And they said to me 10 to 15 to 20% upfront is what they're going to be putting on so everyone's thinking the same thing, which if everyone's coming out to bid and adding 15 to 20%, we're going to end up with a 15 to 20%, even if we get 3. So that's what they're telling me because of the financial risk for them to enter a new market. So I know 9.8 sounds big, but it is under 10. I just want you to remember that. It's slightly under 10, which in terms of risks, which are knowns or unknowns, you know it's 9.8. We do not know what the unknown is. Just want you to think of that, of known and unknown risks.
Unfortunately, that's where they always get us. Much like when
I
they
know.
said they will give you a 3% raise, but if you went out to bid, you're most likely going to get a 7% raise. It's the same hold you over the barrel with a shotgun to the back of your head mentality. That they've
disagreeing
got
with
us
you,
over
Jim.
that barrel, right? I mean, that's
Agreed.
the unfortunate way this is panning out with the limited market, the lack of better terms, monopoly that they have on the area, which is what they have.
Yeah, I share the same sentiments as Mr. Wheatman, and I would be interested to know in terms of like transport, do we get a report to break out transportation costs by school? Because if, to Mr. LaCroix's point, if we wanted to somehow create a competitive market here, maybe it's not, all D46, but maybe we identify, is it, our elementary schools, right, that we kind of create this mix where, okay, for that group, maybe we stick with Durham. For the middle school, we consider piloting something on our own. So we kind of create our own competition without the full investment of the land and the full-scale buses and the full scale of drivers. So it would just be helpful for me to process the feasibility of that if I knew what transportation costs by school look like.
I think there's a huge fixed cost investment for districts to do this. We need to have land, we need to have buses, we need to have drivers, we need to have support. So districts which have established their transportation centers and have been doing it for a long time, I think Woodland has their own, they have driver shortage too. So everything I hear from the other side of the in-house is not the magic elixir that we might think it might be, because at the end of the day, it's still a driver shortage. It's not about the electric buses. It is about the electric buses because, number one, we don't have them available, and they're not part of the 9.8% increase. So it is a issue, because I can't give you the answer you want and say we're going to have them next year. But the underlying issue of the cost increase is the uncertainty of driver shortage. That's the real underlying current and CPI. That's kind of what I read from that. There we go.
Okay. And do we know, I know I asked when Durham was here and I wasn't really clear on their response. Do we know if there's any federal funding dollars that they are receiving to offset costs right now?
I mean, I don't know.
Tamika,
I don't think they give the answer, did they?
I can
No,
speak to that a little bit.
didn't.
I've been talking with PACE, and there is quite a bit of federal funding for public transportation and then in the infrastructure. I have the numbers, but not at the ready right now. But I do know that I don't know specifically what it's available for and if they qualify, but I do know that there's a large amount of money that's available specifically to upgrade public transportation.
Yeah, that'd be helpful to understand and even push back to say, you know, hey, look, we just did an increase, right?
Twice.
Right. And oh, by the way, you're getting this additional funding. And oh, by the way, expenses are down, right? For what, 18 months, almost 2 years now. So, I think that gives us some kind of leverage. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Waldman, not necessarily to the extent that we would like due to the driver shortage, but I do think for us to be doing our due diligence and being fiscally, you know, prudent, that we understand what money is available to them, what savings they've gotten due to expenditures being down over the last 18, 24 months, and at least be able to try to counter that with something.
And I'm going to go back to interest-based bargaining. If this is a negotiation, maybe we want to use some of what we're being trained to do to really kind of step back from transportation and say, what is it? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? And then go through the process so that we have some criteria by which we evaluate whatever options are generated, as opposed to just taking the increases that they offer. I still think there's room to negotiate, even if we have strong upfront or large upfront fees for electric buses. Over the long haul, they do reduce costs, is what is my understanding. And I am not an expert in this. And that's just one lens to look through. The diesel fumes for kids who are on long, and I can't speak to the specifics. Jess, I think you sent us something about this, and I was just skimming it. But there are also health impacts that we might want to think about, especially as we're doing indoor air quality assessments. The buses idle outside of our schools, and that impacts the indoor air quality assessment. So I think there's a lot that we don't know. Might just be interesting and productive to use IBB with this negotiation as well, in some way.
Can I speak for a moment to what you're saying, Christy? So first of all, I really appreciate, just trying to crack that open and think about the IBB training that we're getting. So I want to start with that. What I'm thinking about, though, is that if we're thinking in terms of interest-based bargaining with another entity, which I don't exactly think is what you're talking about, but we'll get there that works if both entities are going to be doing interest-based bargaining, which we probably have no reason to believe that Durham is wanting to do. But I think what you're really talking about is, hey, maybe there's some other options. I think let's use our IBB thinking to generate those other options. I think the difficulty that we have is that if those other options are coming up with entirely different ways of getting our children to school, and perhaps we're talking about having electric buses, which we have identified already are difficult to get, and that we don't have companies around us that have them, that probably our option would be to do that ourselves. And I frankly don't know how we do that ourselves this spring, between now and the start of the school year. If that's a real strong interest of our board, that would feel like that's something for us to pursue for a future change in our transportation services. I hate to be the naysayer, but I don't see how we can do something like that between now and get our students to school in August.
Can I clarify something?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think we would be able to get, electric buses take a year to manufacture from the time they're ordered to the time they're delivered. So we definitely would not have them in time to get our kids. My suggestion is that we think about the negotiation, and if we decide to go that route, that we could then negotiate and find out or push them to move toward electric buses, given that it would be a long-term savings for us over time, not only in just the direct fees, but also in the health costs of our building occupants and of our residents. And there's precedent for this because Pace is doing it north of us. And Pace's strategic plan is to turn their whole fleet over by 2040. So and even to back out further, electric buses is just one option. My thought is, can we open this up so that we are not in a position in 3 months where they're coming back to us and saying, you gave us more money to raise wages, and then because wages went up, we have to now increase the contract renewal rate, and now inflation is really high, and so we have to pay our people more so that we're not continually being held over the barrel. So my thought is not to push electric buses as that's just one possible solution. It's more to use the process so that we start thinking differently, so that we can use the negotiation process to move us in the long term toward a position that's more fiscally responsible, more healthful for our people, and also ecologically. I know that school buses and diesel fuels do a number on our environment, and we may not want that in our communities specifically. So this is just an opportunity to think differently. Again, not pushing, we won't have electric buses in a year. I would be highly surprised if that would be available to us. But we do have a multimodal transportation system, and we have other organizations that are trying to move that forward at the county level too. So again, my point is to think more carefully about the negotiation and what we can negotiate for other than just the rate.
I just have one more question if I can. You said the increase was 225? Is that what you said it was? Over,
Oh, 250,000? I
that way,
said 10% of 2.5 million.
okay, so it's 250,000
Yes.
for the first year.
Yep.
What is picked up in the percentage-wise from the state level in their transportation?
It's a great question. Lynn had the same question for me, and it's difficult to tell you because of the state's reimbursement. If it was all special ed, a lot of it would get picked up a very high percentage, but because it's not all that, it's based on an equalization of that year's regular transportation. So there will be some, but I can't tell you what it's going to be.
On an average day, what do they pick up now?
I can't tell you. I don't know what that is from
Okay.
the regular special ed. From the regular amount, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
It will be several. I don't know what it's going to be, but it will help. But I just don't know what that is for you right now.
Are we able to look at, a couple of years ago to get would that be useful? If we looked at, obviously not last year, that's not useful at all, but the year before, to get that reimbursement rate?
Yeah,
Or is that not going to be useful?
my guess is, to me, it seems like it'd be simple math. What is our total contract and what have they paid us in transportation costs?
We could do some extrapolation.
Because it
yes.
probably isn't
Yep.
going to change a whole lot because our student population doesn't change
The
dramatically.
There's an underlying reason why I'm always hesitant to factor in state money because sometimes it doesn't happen. And it's a bad thing to get your mind into when you depend upon a state revenue that could get pulled and you've made a cost decision on that. So there's an underlying hesitancy for me to give these numbers to you. I understand
That's
it will
because I
be.
thought you just didn't want to
I
answer my
understand.
question.
No, there's a reason. There's a reason. Because I have the same questions with that EBF when I'm presenting my projections. Well, what if EBF goes, well, we're in trouble. That's my honest answer to you guys. But I don't want to factor those in all the time. But yes, it will be. There will be some. But I think it's a bad thing to think that the state's going to bail us out just for our cost increases all the time.
No, I understand. You can never rely on the state, period, right? And nobody's ever advocating that you can.
I look at
I think it's a matter of just in the back of your head, if all things stay equal, what is the true impact of that $250,000
Right.
increase?
The net increase, I agree. Yes, I can look it up for you. I can give you a number. It's my best guess based on an Excel.
Yeah, I think
spreadsheet.
anybody who's been following education in the state would understand that you can't rely on the state to pay for the education, so.
I wanted to float something by you and get your reaction. So transportation contracts are kind of fixed fee-ish, right? They're based on the number of routes. I know that we've done a lot of work in the past at rationalizing routes, so that's what I would consider to be kind of low-hanging fruit. Has there been any consideration given to structuring the contract a little differently and maybe a cost-plus type of an arrangement with a cap? And do you see, I mean, just, I know I'm asking you to extemporaneously just think about this, but does that sound like something that you've heard of or a possible way to negotiate this in a way that might save us some money?
I think if we were putting this out to RFP and you were going with option 2, I think we could put that in the bid specifications and get every response to give us that. I think the difficulty is that they're moving from a contract which is 14 years old, and I don't know how that's going to translate to something that helps us. So possibly, if we thought it through and we put it in our bid specifications, but I think it's going to be really difficult to do that on a contract that's 14 years old. It's kind of my gut answer to you. But yeah, we can do anything we want in terms of a new bid packet, RFP.
Yeah, that would require some transparency on their part.
It would,
Yeah.
and they're sometimes reluctant because they have their fixed costs and that's their margin. Hope that answers that question.
I just wanted to clarify that when I sent the information earlier today, it wasn't to request that we go that route this spring. That's not what I expected. That's unrealistic. I was more hoping, would a company like Durham be willing to think about the future and not promise, but something along those lines, like, yeah, we'd look into this and maybe try to go that route in the future, like 5 years from now.
I mean, I see that in their response, that, you know, they're a global company because they have so much business in Europe, and it's easy to do electric in Europe, that's the direction they're going in Europe for sure. And so, you know, the economics of it here and the getting the stuff, but it feels like they already have a precedent for doing it in their global organization, which gives me some, you know, definitely some optimism that as it becomes more feasible here and funding becomes available to them, that they would go that route here as well. So I think it was great. I think those were great questions to send to him, because then I think we got to, I mean, you know, it's what he says, but the answer was encouraging to me, definitely what we got back. So I appreciated that you sent those over to Chris and that he was able to send them over, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I feel like maybe you know, at the end of the day, we got to get our kids to school next year, right? So we're gonna end up doing something that we don't like, that we're gonna have to live with. You know, none of these is great options, with some optimism for, you know, and, you know, I think what I hear from Jim is, how loud do we say, like, basically, we don't like this, it's not a good partnership model, and, you know, is there an opportunity to basically say, like, we're going to be looking for better partners with better options, and so you may have us over a barrel right now, but, like, this is not going to last forever, you know, so, like, but I don't, you know, I also, like, I want to support you, Chris, in, like, I don't want to undermine your ability to drive to something for them too by thinking we have leverage where we don't, or, you know what I mean? That's the part that's the line that I'm trying to draw, is like, I like the idea of bringing options, but I'm a little concerned that they undermine your ability to get us somewhere, because I think at the end of the day, Durham is going to be our provider next year. You know, so that's my line I'm trying to draw between, let's put other things in it, versus what do we need to do to get our kids to school next year, knowing that we have some other longer term issues that we want to try to address, so.
I'm wondering if we could, as part of our discussion, evaluate the current situation for kids and families too. I don't even know how, I don't know if this is just the people I know, but it seems like there's a lot of people driving their own kids to school and encouraging their own kids to use the trails. So I'm wondering just what that landscape looks like right now, and if that would be a leverage point for a negotiation as well.
If we had some of our administrators in here, I'm sure when they're, like Mr. Smith is out there doing traffic, and I mean, the lines are literally, backing up 83 for both
That's-
Frederick
yeah,
and Jana.
That's
so-
exhausting going into our schools too, as people are idling for literally 45 minutes to pick up at Frederick sometimes.
It's at every school.
Yeah.
I know I've watched the kids outside my front door wait quite a bit too, and I know there have been significant improvements. I know you have been on the phone with them a lot, so this is not, I'm just wondering if
what it is.
Durham,
You know,
if we're going to
yeah.
have pain either way, then it's a matter of which pain do we want in the short term and where are we going in the long term.
From an equity lens, I would say that my interest is every student has a way, a safe way, a timely way, a cost-free way to get to school that doesn't involve their parents needing to drive them or them needing to walk, because people don't walk to Avon School. There's no trails to Avon School. And so I think as we think about the most equitable solution, it's going to be a safe bus that gets them where they need to go. And we can, PTOs can get together, we can do things at Woodland, we can do things in Meadowview, but that's not equitable. And so, I don't want to rely on that. I want the bottom line to be there's a bus with a well-paid bus driver who's, who has what they need to do a good job in a bus that is as good as, as good a quality as we can get right now, given that we can't get to electric. And that they know they're going to get picked up on time because there's enough bus drivers who know what they're doing. And they don't have to worry about, mom has to leave for work 15 minutes before I have to be at school, and mom can't pick me up because, they work they don't work from home. So that's my equity spiel on it too.
I'm glad you brought that up because equitable doesn't have to mean the same. So if we have some families that are willing to organize themselves, does that then make it more equitable because we're using a multimodal system?
Yeah, but you still have to provide a bus service in that area. It doesn't necessarily, I don't know, I mean, it's awesome in addition, like if there are people who want to walk together and all that, I think that's great, but I don't think it changes our remit to provide a bus for a way to get to school for every student who needs it, who doesn't have the opportunity to walk.
Yeah, and I'm not going to solutions, I'm just trying to listen well, but
Yeah.
equitable, am I right? Equitable doesn't mean the same, or does it mean the same?
Well, it means that every student has the same access to be able to
Okay.
get to school. Yeah.
So if I heard, and again, I'm just listening. So if I heard you, then the interest that we have is to provide a safe, equitable,
Timely,
timely.
reliable. Maybe timely and reliable or,
Similar. I'll just put
right.
and cost effective, right? Are there other? Did you say does convenience?
Bless you.
Does convenience? fit with
I would say just
reliable?
not dependent on their parents' ability to provide
Bless you.
supervision or support.
Okay. So dependence. But if that's the interest for us, then one position is busing, right? Because that's a solution. There might be others worth talking about, and there might be a combination of those that would work and meet the position that the interest that we have.
Well, the competing interest we have too is balancing our budget, right?
Right, well, cost effective is one of the,
Yeah, but we don't have a lot of control over that. It's
Yeah.
the problem. And we have a third party we have to negotiate that piece with.
yeah, oh, yeah, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm
No,
just-
no, I didn't think you
Yeah.
were.
something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Okay, that was a good discussion, I thought. Thank you, everybody. Next, we have our topics for the future agenda.
Well, before we go to topics for future agenda, I'm going to make a guess that Mr. Wellman does not know what to bring back to you.
All of the above.
Was that a good guess, Chris? Okay. All right.
I can't speak for everyone. I would love to know what our ridership is right now. Like, that would be great. And then
I think there's
also,
some data. I think there's
Okay.
some data requests. We wish to know renewals, which I'm working on. I don't have them. Ridership, internal data. I think, was some other? Some of this, yeah, that's for that's a different that's fees. But for that one's easy. And potentially talking to them about what's open for negotiation. Is that, I guess that's the option 2 is just still on the table. And option 3 is me telling you I'm ready to go for my RFP when we're ready to pull the trigger. That's the
wonder-
options available to us.
Okay. So you got a sense. Okay, good.
Yep.
Okay.
can I just add the VW mitigation funding? I know that's electric busing, and I know that that's off maybe in left field, but I believe that's private funding from, I think Chattanooga. Their economic development plan was to supply electric buses, and that's not a state-funded initiative, so it might just be available to us and a negotiating
Okay.
leverage point.
Okay. I don't know what you're talking. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's the VW mitigation funds,
Okay.
and that's to help,
Yeah.
it's to help bus companies
Gotcha. Okay.
transform their fleets.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. Upcoming. The public hearing for issue of bonds. Calendar draft approval. We're hoping that we'll be able to bring a district calendar to you in January. Might be February, but we're hoping for January. More on the flat panels. Well, I had written adoption of student fees, but now I think it's more on student fees and probably more on Durham. Yes? Okay. And then Christy, where are we with bringing legislators here? Christy Braden.
I sent the January and February dates to Senator Bush's aide, so we're going to try to get her in. She said that January, February would be a good time frame for her to come. So I'll
Okay.
try to nail that down
Okay,
before the holidays.
Great. I have it listed on future with a question mark. And that's what I have for January.
Just a reminder for the board members to report out during the board reports for that month. I don't know if it has to be on your topics, but
Well,
just a reminder.
It could be a discussion item if you want it, or if it's board reports. Do you care?
How would you like to do it?
Board reports.
I think board reports is fine.
Then it's not on my list.
No.
Okay.
I know for our board agreements, we wanted to take a look at next steps for looking at policy implications for the strategic plan. I don't know if that's a January thing or if do we have an idea of when we want to talk about that?
So we have been, I don't know if there's more that the board wants to do with this. We've made an attempt, the administration has made an attempt that anytime we're bringing you something, a discussion or an action item, we're including policy so that you can continue to see anything that we're doing and how it's impacted by policy or how it impacts policy. So, and of course, the things we bring you, for the most part, are deeply connected to strategic plan. So I don't know if there's more discussion that the board wanted to have than that.
I just didn't know if there were habits we wanted to cultivate or if that's, and it's truly
Yeah,
a
I think
question, I
it's-
just don't know.
I think it was less of an action item than a habit of asking, like, what are the policy implications of what we're talking about? So we should probably a good way to start doing that would be to actually look at the great policy references that our superintendent already provides for us, for sure.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then I guess as you look over the policies that they're connecting them to, there's questions that we need to look at changing that policy, then we can bring that up in a policy.
How does that work? If we were, I'm not on the policy committee, and I don't understand how policy gets changed, or, like, can you walk me through that?
A brief overview of how the policy gets changed. We subscribe to Press Plus through the schools, through ISB. And they provide us the recommended updates every, I don't know, every once in a while.
Whenever they want.
Whenever they want to. Sometimes they give you 100 of them. And then the policy committee sits when they go through and look at what their recommendations are. In the time frame I've been here, I think we've only really looked at changing one policy, and I think it ended up being a student policy more than a board policy, and that was on the dress code, to make it a little more equitable as far as that goes. But majority of the majority of those board policies are like built into the law. So there's very little leeway, and if there's a leeway, Press Plus usually gives us kind of options that we can choose from.
I think there's also proactive, like with the equity audit, there might be some recommendations there. I think that's going to be, because that's part of the audit, is it look at our policies through that lens. So there's also times, I think, when like something like that comes up where we're like, hey, this policy needs a brush up, or we need a new policy to make sure we're clear on, this specific issue. So I think we'll see more of that coming too as we get equity audit data.
And just to clarify, we're not waiting for Press to tell us that. That's more tailored to our
That's right.
district, and
Yeah.
the audit will inform that.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Still on the policy topic. So my wife got a label maker recently. I think I'm going to make 7 labels for the back of our name tags that say, is there a policy for that? And what are the policy implications, so that we can see that. That's my commitment to you all.
Thank you, Amber.
Okay. We're back up to public comments. Nope. Okay. So we do need a closed session, according to Dr. Glickman. And so I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Nash,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Albert,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
and Braden.
Aye.
And we do not expect any action to come out of closed session. So when we come out of closed, we're just going to adjourn and go home.
Yes. I mean, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.